inquiry to ensure that history will not repeat itself. I would just like to take this opportunity just to show you that we intend to ensure that those individuals or any individual or group would not have the opportunity to do the same. In that recommendation, in that commission of inquiry appointed to inquire into the events surrounding the attempted coup d'etat of 27 July 1990, there were several recommendations made. And it is important for me as Commissioner of Police to keep monitoring this, because we need to learn from our mistakes and see what it is that we did wrong. One of the things they did recommend is that we have the resources, the capability, and the type of leadership required, and we do not need external support. There was also the strong recommendation for the establishment of a National Security Operations Center. Thankfully, through the Minister of National Security, that has been reignited, and it has played a very big part to assist the country to make sure we monitor everything and have information fed in real time. There was also the importance of the rationalization of our intelligence agencies, as well as a strong recommendation in respect of operational matters, where it was recommended for the creation of a direct action task force as a first response or first strike unit under the command of the Commissioner of Police. Now, this actually took place before my tour of duty here. The Direct Action Task Force rule would involve direct intervention in areas or situations of potential or actual criminal activity. Therein lies the establishment of the Special Operation Response Team, SORT. Because of the establishment of SORT, as well as the training, the upgrade, the improvement in our other elite units, being MOPS, GEB, and the IATF, these units are properly prepared, trained, and we will ensure that we will always have the numerical superiority. We will be able to outgun, outman, outthink any criminal element or organization that intend to do anything remotely close to what happened in 1990. There were a number of other recommendations, inclusive of the restructuring of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to improve the administrative strength, strategies, and this has also been done. Truly, there's been a massive restructuring of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, where we have now been able to utilize our resources in a more effective and efficient manner. There was also how it is that you deal with the deployment of police officers and the formation of the anti-corruption unit. And again, we have also restructured the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service as it pertains to that, where we now have a white-collar crime unit. And in the white-collar crime unit, we now have the ACIB, the fraud, the cybercrime, and the FIB, all under one umbrella. A number of other recommendations. So the point being to the public is that we are not going to sit idly by to allow any group institution to feel that they can do what it is they did 30 years ago. Just a few months ago, there was that attempt where we were tested, and certain individuals, criminal elements, decided to use the cloak of Black Lives Matter to see if they can destabilize the country. Under the concept of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, several of these criminal elements, known as gangs, they decided to mobilize to see what can be done to loot, to plunder, to kill. It was also to target at police officers. But again, because of their lack of training, common sense, and leadership, as well as management, you saw recently where they were forced to now import foreign-use hitmen to go after the Commissioner of Police. And it says a lot for their standard. I give the assurance that if any organization 30 years later will try anything remotely close to what took place 30 years ago, they would be neutralized. There's a concern about my style, but there comes a time when certain persons need to step up and do what is required. Individuals do not like this because they want to have a Commissioner of Police who is laid back, who is calm and set back to allow them to do what is required. The concept of any organization that intends to have anything of a repeat 30 years ago, my policy of one shot, one kill would be enforced. I give the assurance to the country again that unfortunately, even when I was the youngest officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, many of us, we were demoralized because we knew what should have been done. And it took 7 days to be completed. I will re-emphasize my point. If any organization decides to repeat whatever that they tried 30 years ago, it would not take 7 days to be eliminated. The issue will be solved and individuals will be neutralized in 7 minutes. I will now ask the DCP Ford to just come and just to explain to us what we are doing as it pertains to operational policies. But as I close, as it pertains to this matter, the fact is, let us remember that we have individuals who decided to shoot and hit a Prime Minister at that time. Several police officers and other persons were killed in cold blood. We lost democracy. It was the darkest day in our nation's history. And unfortunately, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we were off the blocks a little too slow. You saw what happened a few weeks ago. They tested us, and within minutes, 40 different areas where they decided to loot, block roads, and come into Port of Spain later on. We were able to immediately deal with it, and it's because of the training, the technology, and we are prepared to ensure that it will not happen again. There are a number of different things you will be seeing in the very near future. People have a concern about certain things, such as the armored personnel carrier. But this is the type of equipment and the type of tools that will be required to neutralize such individuals. We do have a situation, a concern. I have made mention of it recently, as it pertains to our borders. We speak a lot about our illegal ports of entry, where illegal drugs, weapons, and the concern of human trafficking. But it is not just the illegal ports of entry. After speaking to our international allies, especially the US and the UK, we have confirmation that the majority of illegal weapons come through the legitimate ports of entry. And the problem lies that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we do not have access to have any input to prevent that from happening. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we seize arguably 2 to 3 illegal firearms every day. So at the end of the year, we will seize about 1,000 illegal firearms. But if there's just one container that leaves that port without being properly checked, will have 2,000 firearms, all the work that we have achieved in 1 year would be of no use, and because it can be doubled in one night. There's a strong need for us to have police input in those ports to ensure that anything that leaves the port can be properly checked to prevent illegal weapons from entering the country. And I now ask the DCP operations, Mr. Ford, just to explain to the country what it is that we are doing as it pertains to operations at this time. Mr. Ford.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Trinidad and Tobago, good afternoon to all of you. I want to reiterate the motto of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which is to protect and to serve you with pride. To achieve that, it means that we, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, cannot work by ourselves. We work in collaboration with other law enforcement agencies, but more importantly, we partner with the population of Trinidad and Tobago to share pertinent information with us so that we can action that information and then allow me the pleasure to come and report to you what is weekly or every other week on our successes so far. Today I'm going to give you basically an overview of operations that were done at the divisional level, operations that were done by certain sections and branches, and then I want to share with you 2 special operations that we ran over this weekend that resulted in what we call monumental successes for all of Trinidad and Tobago. As it relates to the divisional operations, we had in excess of 100 operations for the past week, which was the 19th to the 26th of this month. That resulted in several persons, more than 100 persons being arrested. And out of that, 126 persons were charged and taken to court for wounding offenses, firearm offenses, arms and ammunition offenses, robberies, and the like. What we saw happening is that in addition to those divisional operations, we had some sections that performed incredibly well. And I want to draw attention to 2, and then by extension, 3 specific operations. On the 7th of January this year, we had a murder that took place in Windy Hill, Aruca. And a particular team was formed that conducted inquiries which saw that at the middle of last week into weekend, special operations were run and 5 persons were arrested and charged for conspiracy to murder, and, importantly, gang-related offenses. Going forward, you would appreciate that as police officers, we try to be omnipresent. We try to be everywhere. Last week, Tuesday night, in Mason Hall, Tobago, our officers were out on patrol. However, what we found happening is that two of our citizens were shot and killed in Mason Hall. We formulated a special team that ran operations from Tuesday into this morning that resulted in the arrest of 13 persons who are still in custody. It also saw the retrieval of a number of exhibits, scientific and otherwise. We saw the seizure of a rifle, pistols, and other scientific evidence. Inquiries are ongoing, and we will be consulting with the DPP to go forward. What I want to draw your attention to as a special operation that took place this weekend is that, again, with the partnership that we share with you, the public, you shared information with us that some boats had left Venezuela and were on their way to Trinidad and Tobago. The information was that those boats, two specifically, were heading to the Las Cuevas area. As a result of collaboration between the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the Coast Guard was deployed in the Gulf. That culminated in a boat containing 32 Venezuelans and one Trinidadian who was a captain being arrested and taken to Stobles Bay. Those persons, as a news briefing earlier indicated to you, have been medically examined and they have been quarantined at the heliport. But that was not the end of the story. Because we had information that boats were heading to Las Cuevas, we also mobilized police officers at Las Cuevas. And that resulted in 8 nationals and 8 Venezuelan nationals being arrested. And inquiries are being conducted with those persons in relation to trafficking in human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past week, we have seen operations in excess of 100 that facilitated the seizure of drugs, firearms, ammunition, illegal immigrants. And as I speak, in the Southwestern Division, we have a collaboration going on with the Immigration Department where we have 46 Venezuelan nationals detained. And we are interviewing them, and all things being equal, they will be charged for entering our country illegally. Going forward, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will be collaborating with all law enforcement agencies, and we will continue to partner with the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago because, as I said earlier, whilst we are charged as being the primary enforcers of law in Trinidad and Tobago, we cannot do it alone. And if you see anything that is suspicious, anything, do not analyze it yourself. Pass it on to us. You can call the nearest police station, and we have reactivated 555. Call, and we are acting immediately. Our job is to make sure that you are safe and secure. We have pledged to do that, and with your partnership, we will achieve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DCP Ford. Before I move on to the next topic, again, just to re-emphasize as it pertains to the anniversary of the attempted coup. There is a concern by criminal elements as it pertains to the fear factor, and we need to put fear in criminal elements. There's obviously going to be a concern of criminal elements not liking the stance that I would take as Commissioner of Police. But there's a time I must do what is required. Again, I give the assurance to the public that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are fully prepared. Whereas in 1990, you would have seen the police service being on the back burner and the Defense Force was at front. What you would have seen a few weeks ago, if at any time there's a repeat, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will be the frontline organization, and the Defense Force may probably be there to give us support. We train heavily, we train hard, and there's a saying that the more we sweat and train in times of peace, is the less that we will bleed in times of armed conflict. Even at these times, we have a recent situation where one major political leader, there's just been a death threat on that individual. And it shows the situation and where we live and how we live. If any organization decides to try to destroy our democracy, I would see it as an act of war, and we will act accordingly. My final point in this matter is that there's one thing I would like to make a recommendation to, and that is to the media. I think this may be the only country in the world where an individual who has destroyed our democracy has been the catalyst towards the darkest day in our nation's history, was involved in overthrowing a government, being the person that was instrumental in persons being killed, millions of dollars in damage, persons being hurt, they lost their loved ones, and yet the media continues to glorify this individual by giving him exposure at every chance you could get. What we have done is we glorify wrongdoing. We give him an opportunity, we give him a voice, and he would use this opportunity and use this voice to do what is required, which is to attack the police service. We need to understand who are our friends and who are our enemies. God forgives. I do not forget. And we, members of the media, I will ask you to think, yes, it is a person's right to speak, but which other country in the world, an individual decided to destroy democracy, and every chance that he gets, he will just call a press conference or the media will contact him to get his view. His view should be as irrelevant as the individual himself and what he has done to this country. I will now move on to a second point before we go on to the main issue, that being as it pertains to the Commissioner's Cup. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are fully aware of the importance of safety and security of this country. We have been the frontline organization to ensure that the COVID pandemic remains in such a way that will not affect the health of individuals and the safety of the country. So we automatically would take the recommendation by the Chief Medical Officer and the Minister of Health. So if the Chief Medical Officer has a concern as it pertains to a football tournament, we would adhere to it. And I think persons have misunderstood my point. So if there's a concern about the Commissioner's Cup, which is something that was to be used as a catalyst towards getting young persons to remain healthy, to stay away from crime, and to utilize their energies in the right manner, but there's a concern by the CMO, well then obviously we will not have the Commissioner's Cup. But my point being is that there's a saying that you cannot be half pregnant. In the same way that every single day we've heard the concern not to have a sporting tournament, there's less risk for a sporting tournament than there is for 1,000 children on Maracas Beach on a Sunday. But I have not heard that concern by the CMO and the Minister of Health. I have not heard a concern by the Minister of Health and the CMO about several hundred children being in a water park, or hundreds of children in a movie theater where the air will be circulating. And my point is, the reason why we need to know is because the police service, we are here to enforce laws, and we are also here to persuade in policies. So if it is that you just give us a briefing to say that do not have a sporting tournament, but you could allow persons to play 20-a-side small goal in an enclosed environment in Nelson Mandela Park and nothing is done, that is not democracy, that's hypocrisy. What makes it very difficult, I heard the Minister of Health, he spoke today and he said communication is the key. It is very interesting that the Minister of Health has stated this, because for a few days now I've asked the Minister of Health to contact me and he said he's busy. For several days we've asked him to meet the CMO and he has refused to meet with the Commissioner of Police. One would think that in a situation like this, the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer will see it fit that the Commissioner of Police should be at the forefront for them to communicate with on a regular basis, because I am the person who has to enforce laws and persuade in policies. Because when you brief me, I will be able to adhere to what it is they require. So rather than persons trying to make things personal, I will ask the Minister of Health to take his own advice and use communication as a key to ensuring that what it is they recommend, we as the police service can adhere to it and assist them in enforcing laws and persuasion in policies. The final and the major topic today has to do with what we have seen on the headlines of a few newspapers over the last few days. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, our job obviously involves law enforcement. It is very unfortunate that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service We've been paraded on political platforms over the last few days. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, especially under my watch, during my tour of duty, we are not here to help any political party or to discredit any political party. We are not here to assist any politician or to target any politician. But it has become the norm that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has become a platform issue for individuals and organizations to use to help them in their campaign. Recently, just a few weeks ago, there was a candidate, a candidate who's a political leader. He decided to attack the police. He actually stated that the police service is an element of the government. Now, if this individual says this and he's a political leader, and he's not a political leader from Trinidad, and he decides to make a comment like this and just say he becomes prime minister or has an influence in the running of a government, how can the police service expect to have somebody who holds that leadership capability? You have just demonized, discredited the police service by stating that we are political. This is an independent institution. We are very transparent. And it is very unfortunate that individuals could say what they want about the police service in the hope that they can win votes. But as I said, people have their rights to make any comment. You can be a politician, or you could be even charged for a sexual offense. But you have a right to say what you want about the police service. And that is very interesting. But that is democracy. Likewise, there are other independent bodies where there are 3 political leaders. And as I stated before, if these 3 political leaders, they take their party, they combine to have a mass assembly, I will not be able to arrest them for breaching the public health ordinance regulations because they have no more than 25 supporters. But what they have done is continue to use the police service as a platform and demonize the police service. So your whole manifesto is you want to lead a country and all you do is to attack the police service. Now the concept of this is clear. These individuals understand that, listen, if I try to mobilize certain elements who may be against the police, I could probably get them to support me. So they will have their database and their support base. Their support base may involve persons of interest to the police service. My support base are the victims of crime, persons who have suffered from crime, law-abiding citizens, and persons who want a safe and secure society to ensure that their most fundamental right would be adhered to, which is that of safety and security. So they will continue to use the police service as an avenue to see if they could gain some type of support or to see if it is that they can discredit the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And the latest now has to do with the situation as it pertains to EMBD. We have heard comments made recently alluding that the police are being influenced. I wish to give the assurance to the country that this is totally untrue. It is an embarrassment to this nation that we have seen and heard so many accusations, all these gates that have been flying left, right, and center over the last few years, and nothing, there's been no closure. What we have done as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, I said before that I intend to close all gates. I drafted the civil asset forfeiture when I was in another place to ensure that we can find a way to put an end to white-collar crime. I was able to restructure the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to deal with white-collar crime. As I promised to close all gates then, it continues. Within the last year, the Day of Total Policing, the Calabar Foundation, the Vincent Nelson conspiracy matter, email gate, the marijuana found at the Prime Minister's home, 2 political leaders, one being charged, one being arrested, Cambridge Analytica, the list goes on. So nothing has changed. It doesn't mean that I have to stop business because we are coming into an election campaign. I am not going to have the police service used as an avenue to discredit any politician, but for it to be perceived that I need to pull brakes, stop everything because of an election campaign, that is irrelevant to me. The AV drilling, EMBD, live sport. In fact, live sport, when I was in another place, I was the one who actually started the investigation and provided all the information to the police service. So it is very inappropriate if persons now accuse the police service of being influenced or pressured by the government, especially when I just mentioned several other cases that were closed that would have not been to the benefit of this present government. I think the country knows me by now to understand that I cannot be bought, and I have no strings that can be pulled. I will now ask the head of legal, Mr. Christian Chandler, to give a breakdown as it pertains to this matter with EMBD and the very unfortunate comments that we have heard over the last few days alluding to the fact that the police can be influenced in some form or fashion as it pertains to this investigation. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Commissioner. Pleasant good afternoon, everyone. To chime off where the Commissioner just alluded to, with the advent of the general elections being called, it appears to us that attempts have been made to politicize the investigations. Some of the investigations that the Ttps have now gotten to an advanced stage. This is very unfortunate that it is being politicized and thrown into the political arena, because we didn't have the election date in our back pocket, so we would not have known. What has happened is, since the start of 2019, when I took office as head legal, I would have been working with a company out of the UK called EMM. EMM has been contracted to assist us with fraud and fraud-related matters. To that end, EMM have gone through at least 1.5 million documents in their exercise, in their investigations, in a bid to unearth and to advance the investigations surrounding EMBD and live sport matters. These matters were, apparently they were shelved and nothing was done with it. So for years, they just sat there until, with the assistance of EMM and a team of officers from the Anti-Corruption Bureau, the matter has now been significantly advanced. To that end, in today's media, we see, for instance, in the Express, only circumstantial kickback evidence. And they allude to a particular letter sent from EMM to Ed Jenkins, QC, allude. So it is curious how every time something of a sensitive nature that is sent to the DPP's office, it somehow ends up in the Express. I find that very curious. But we will let the public make of that what they may. The fact of the matter is that that was in June that they were referring to. From June to now, investigations have been continuing. Search warrants have been executed. Witness statements have been recorded. Production orders have been executed and the information received. So that it is not just circumstantial evidence. It is more than that. But I want to say that the circumstantial evidence in which that is alluded to, the circumstantial evidence in itself is reliable. It is strong evidence, and the law has proven that sometimes it can be more beneficial having circumstantial evidence than even direct evidence. So to say that you expect a fraudster, someone who committed fraud, to just leave documents lying around and say, here, I committed this fraud, that's impossible. So sometimes you have to use the evidence that is before you. And I dare say that the evidence is not weak or tenuous at best. It is very strong. And the TTPS will continue to maintain its investigations and push them forward into the arena of looking at possible charges. Now, there's also the issue of search warrants that have arisen. And the question, an issue was raised about, well, do the police need permission to go and get a search warrant? Do they need to get permission from the office of the DPP? The answer to that is no. They don't need any permission. The police can go and get the search warrant. The law provides for that under the Preliminary Inquiries Act and several other pieces of legislation. So they can go get the warrant if they have reasonable cause to suspect. In this case, there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of grounds for submission in order to get these warrants. Now, the legal unit is something that has been developed by the Commissioner of Police. It is something that he saw fit to expand because the law is something that we deal with on a constant basis. And it's because of that we now have a stronger, a more robust and developed legal department That in itself now lends support within the length and breadth of the organization. So now what you have is police officers can now rely upon the legal department for assistance and for guidance. In complex matters, the matters will be referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions, no doubt. And there are also instances where the law requires that the permission of the Director of Public Prosecutions be sought in order to advance a charge or to lay any charges. But outside of that, the TTPS has developed its legal department. And part of that is that they work hand in hand with the white-collar crime unit. And that is part and parcel of what has assisted in developing a lot of these investigations that are intricate in nature. Now, EMBD, if I might be permitted to just delve a little, because I don't want to go into it because it's subject of an investigation. But what I will say, because, see, the public has been hearing about EMBD. What is EMBD? EMBD is a state liability company that generally, from when you look on their site, they were set up to deal with things like agriculture and some other things, estate management. That being the case, these complex matters were broken down into silos to make it simple to assist in the investigations and to drive them forward. That being the case, one of the main thrusts of this investigation and why it surrounds EMBD is simple. During the last, 2015 and 2015, just before the election, what you had is a scope of works being developed and a cabinet note being sent for EMBD to do about 10 roads, C1 to C10. And let us understand that that was nowhere near or not in the scope of works or something that is done by EMBD. So you have almost $550 million being spent between June of 2015 and all spent by September 4th of 2015. $550 million. And this is for roads that were supposed to either be built with certain materials, and roads that may have never been built. So without going too much into it, let us understand that there is much in the mortar here, very much. And the TTPS will not be used as a horse and pony show. Not because elections have been called and we have reached a critical stage of the investigation means that what we're supposed to shut down and say, oh yeah, it's too political, we shouldn't do anything about it, we should just leave it there. No, that must not be the case. We have a job to do. And it does not matter which side, because we have investigations that touch and concern either side of the spectrum, and they are all being advanced equivalently. So we will continue to do our job as unbiased and impartially as we can, and without fear or favor. So I want to give the assurance that this talk about agendas by the TTPS, by the Commissioner, by myself as head legal, that is utter rubbish. The fact of the matter is that the matters have been pushed from 2019 to now, the start of 2019 to now. So whoever have their advisors that sitting down collecting money for however long, so be it. They must justify why it is that for however long, what have they produced? What are their results? What we know is the consultants hired to assist the TTPS have worked diligently, assiduously to produce what we have now. And that is why we have the case that we have now. That is why we have something tangible to present, to say, yes, we have a case, we have evidence. Because what did we have before? We had nothing. All we had was a bunch of information sitting there, and no one seemed to know what to do with it. So what we've had is a firm come in who specializes in fraud-related matters, knowing exactly what to do, where to look, how to go about it, assisting us in getting the job done, because that's what we're about, results. We're result-oriented. And to date, what we have are results. Commissioner.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, just to, in summary, as Mr. Chandler stated, we are speaking about over $1,000 million that we're involved in investigations in two matters, live sport and EMBD. And now it seems that persons seem to be concerned that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have hired external support. But what is amazing is that the DPP's office, he has external support. We are aware of Mr. Lindquist and others involved in forensic auditing that have come here. This country cannot be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to have investigations take place on CLICO, live sport, EMBD, the airport, and nothing comes about. We need to make sure that we put closure one way or the other, because all that we are doing is certain persons would want these cases to continue. The longer these cases remain, the more money other persons can make. And as it pertains to this, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we cannot turn a blind eye because of a situation. It seems, however, that there's a chicken and egg scenario we are in here, where we are being told that there's not enough evidence as yet to push for a warrant, to push for an arrest. But then after, when we try to get a warrant to try to see if we can pursue the investigation, we are then being told from external forces of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which is highly irregular, that you should not have a warrant because you don't have enough of the evidence as yet. But that is what a warrant is about. A warrant is about the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service trying to find enough evidence to substantiate if it is that a criminal charge should be laid, or if it is that there's nothing. So you can't box us in a situation, and I find it is very interesting that we are in a position where external agencies, and again it gets in the hands of the media, because this is not the first time. The DPP and I, we have a very good rapport, and I am concerned because it is the second time now that we have seen some type of breach in the office of the DPP. If you recall, just a few weeks ago, when there was a report that came to me as it pertained to ACP Hackshaw, this came to me in a sealed envelope from the office of the DPP. The only person that would have seen it outside of the DPP's office would be me. The envelope was sealed. Yet, a media reporter was able to know everything that was stated in that letter. So it meant, obviously, there's a major leak in the office of the DPP. And obviously, as a DPP, being a very good comrade of mine, we work well together. I am willing to speak with him to see what is going on that will cause these leaks. Because if there's a major leak in the office of the DPP, it means that it can very well affect any investigation by getting media sensationalism deliberately assigned by individuals who may have links inside the DPP's office that can affect an investigation. Members of the media, before I close, again, just to summarize, what we have achieved in dealing with EMBD and live sport in the last 5 months has been more than we have done in the last 5 years before this. I certainly know that persons would be upset, offended if it is that I move too fast or too slow, and especially during an election period. It means we have actually seen emails from individuals external to the police service stating that now is an election period, and these are persons who are being paid to assist us, external to the police service. I do not work on Ronnie McIntosh lyrics of how it go look. I don't work along that line. I work towards us doing our job. And I think with hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on a regular basis dealing with these matters, we need to put closure to these investigations. I think it is very unfortunate when external agencies are trying to tell the police service where and when a warrant should be issued, and then that comes out sometimes in the public. We are doing what is required because persons should be happy. Every single law-abiding citizen should be pleased that the police we are pursuing an investigation as quickly as possible to bring closure, to make sure that persons who may actually be identified or targeted, that for them to know, listen, I can be exonerated, and it is now clear that I have not committed a crime. Anybody who has an issue with the police moving fast as quickly as possible, whilst not giving away accuracy for speed, that we are doing all that is required. But please do not question the integrity and the professionalism of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. No political party, no political leader, no organization can influence the police service. We're an independent body, very transparent, and we will deal with all investigations on its merit, on a case-by-case basis. And if it is, it will please one political party or not, or it will affect one political candidate or not, it is irrelevant to us. We have a job to do. I give the assurance to the public that we will do it in a very impartial manner. With that, I open to the media.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Nicholas Lachman Singh from TV6. Commissioner, just to go back a little bit to the elections, when you talk about gatherings and stuff like that, we see a lot of walkabouts and we see a lot of political parties carrying about with crowds and all these things. And we also see police officers accompanying them on these things. Why aren't police officers, I'm not blaming police officers, but why is there not more protocols being stated when these gatherings are there? And what exactly, or how long is the Ttps going to wait until the Minister of Health or the CMO contacts the Commissioner for something to be done about this new second wave that we're seeing with COVID? How long are you going to wait until something is done when it comes to gatherings and stuff like that in face of elections? DCP Ford, you spoke about migrants being captured. What specifically is done when it comes to determine whether one is an illegal migrant or not? Could you just state that for the public? What is looked at when Venezuelans are held? What sort of documentation is looked at on all these things? Christian, could you just explain to me how long now has EMBD has been under the radar of the TTPS, and how soon could we see any results out of it as a public looking forward to an entity that could possibly be untouchable? And Commissioner, what is specifically holding back the warrants, or what is specifically holding back the issuing of warrants when it comes to this case?
Okay, right. So let me answer the first and fourth, and then you'll go to the other two. What's the first one again? Right. Gosh. Yes, and I am trying to put a new order as it pertains to general election campaign. Persons say, oh, this is Trinidad and Tobago, this is our culture. You can't have a culture where it says that persons are breaking the law. You would have seen exactly what you spoke about, Nicholas, in Carenage a few weeks ago, where I was involved in strong confrontation with individuals because they just simply did not understand what was required. Because for years in all general elections, it's a motorcade, I could just throw my truck and go wherever I want. It cannot happen, it is wrong. And there was a reason for that. That was a simple example. But you put in a truck in the road, not getting transport commissioner, not making sure that the relevant restrictions would be in place because we didn't have police officers to direct traffic. We had traffic backed up for 3 hours. Then you had the other political party coming down the road, and then in the middle of the road, 20 persons waving flags that they could have been killed because there was no police presence. Then after that, a couple started fighting in the middle of the road, rolling. Well, the lady was beating the man to a frazzle. But I don't know who was PNM and who was UNC. They started fighting in the road. And what we're trying to do is just put a degree of calm. I want this to be the same way it is for Carnival. It was the safest Carnival ever. I want this to be a safe general election. We already have picked up, someone made a call of a death threat of a senior political leader. So we need to be very careful as to how we deal with this election campaign. Likewise, there's something that Mr. Ford could elaborate on. This thing that people feel that I can look at someone's wall and plaster 1,000 photos on someone's wall and just ride out after. And then after the election, we have these things that has defaced the country for the next few years because nobody is taking it out. It is against the law. So I am putting things, and people, again, the Hate Gary campaign will just continue. I think they have application forms for it. But I am not here to win friends or do the popular thing. I am here to do what is required. So as it pertains now to the other aspect, you are speaking more about the walkabouts. With the motorcades, I have spoken to now every single political party. They are adhering, they are adhering to what is required, which is good. As it pertains to the walkabout, big issue, and you're correct. We are trying to be as flexible as possible, but it becomes very difficult because as soon as you pass 25 persons, the police now wondering, okay, so who's the 26 and 27 person we need to remove from the scene? Some political parties, they have been beating the system, for want of a better word. They turn up there with 100 persons, they will have a group of 25, then they have a space, and they have another group of 25. So there's a lot that they're doing to try to beat the system. The police service, we intend to be very stringent in comparison to what was a few weeks ago because of what we have seen in the escalation of the concern of the COVID pandemic. So yes, we would be very, very vigilant. We would try to be as flexible as possible. We are going to remind persons to wear their masks. Remember, this is not against the law, but we try to use the power of persuasion. So you are correct. What I will plead more than anything else, the candidates and the campaign managers, your responsibility is enormous. You need to get the public to be aware, to listen. Look at what it is required, and don't just feel that the more persons that come out is better for us as a political party to win an election. We are speaking about lives here, which is why it is hoped that the CMO and the Minister of Health will somehow start to communicate with me so I'll be able to adhere to what it is that they require. The fourth point was the warrants. Nothing at all, and this is where we have the problem that Mr. Chandler spoke about. The police service, we are the ones that decide about a warrant, no other external agency. But an individual who is contracted from an external agency has now virtually interfered with an investigation to recommend that we do not set a warrant as yet. Now this has come out in public domain. That is very unfortunate. However, because of the enormous respect I have for the office of the DPP, and because of the type of investigation, we intend to work as much as possible with the DPP and take his advice. But just to clarify, the police, we do not require advice or direction or approval from any organization for warrants to be issued. But there would be a need in certain investigations for warrants to take place so that we can enhance our evidence gathering to ascertain if a crime was committed. And because of this matter now being exposed, the longer it takes for us to drive forward with warrants in matters like this, the more time individuals may have to cover their tracks. So it has basically compromised the investigation. Mr. Ford, the other.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Lachman Singh, just to continue on what the Commissioner was saying to deal with that. As it relates to the persons plastering posters on walls, lampposts, and other things, there are roughly about 4 pieces of legislation that deal with that. And that would be the Advertisement Regulations Act, the Summary Offences Act, the Malicious Damage Act, the Municipal Corporations Act. And it says briefly that if you should plaster or place any advertisement or poster on any person's wall to deface it or damage it, you are committing an offense. The rest of the police service, we acknowledge that elections is a highly emotional activity. Make no mistake about it. As I said the last time I was here, persons are highly motivated for their parties to win. And we understand that. But we expect that the campaign managers, just as the Commissioner said just now, would take themselves back a bit away from that emotions and speak to the supporters and let them know that after elections, these homeowners, they have to clean these walls that you all are damaging, that you all are defacing. There's a cost attached to it. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is not about preventing persons from exercising their rights, but we're about educating. And as such, we do not want a confrontation with a party to be challenging or arresting persons for malicious damage. But certainly we can trace the originator who is responsible for the damage. But we don't want that, so we are appealing to parties, as the Commissioner said, to candidates and to campaign managers. Please speak to your supporters. Do not damage, do not deface walls. There's a cost attached to it thereafter that the parties are not going to bear. It falls on me, the homeowner. On the question that you asked of me concerning bona fide or fake Venezuelan nationals here, as you all are aware, last year we had a registration exercise that took place where registration documents were issued to persons who had come forward. What I can tell you is that, one, when we hold persons, we inquire about their status. And obviously, if your status is legal, then we'll have to allow you to leave. However, there's a proviso to that. We have found situations where persons have breached the borders and they have gone across to Venezuela and come back and they have registration documents. Once we find you in that peculiar situation, we are going to report you, and the Minister of National Security has committed that he's going to cancel that registration document that you have, and as such you will be deemed as being a person undesirable, and we will take you back or get you back to Venezuela. In addition to that, as you're speaking about the bona fide and fake persons, going forward, we are going to be challenging persons who we meet outside there, and we are going to be asking them to show their documentation. Because on the face of it, I cannot tell who legal and who illegal. So we are going to be challenging them. If you are found to be wanting, then we are going to charge you, and you are going to be sentenced after place in court. In addition to that, going forward, we're looking at also the repatriation of these persons. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we have approximately 167 Venezuelans who have been repatriated back to Venezuela. So we have different steps that we are taking. One, we're discouraging you coming here so that the Coast Guard outside, our brothers, the Coast Guard, once they find you on the high seas, they turn you back. If by chance you are crafty enough and you land here, and we have the information, we're going to arrest you, we're going to question you, we're going to charge you. And when charged, you will be repatriated. You serve your sentence, but you will also be repatriated back to Venezuela. Again, I want to make that appeal that once you see something or you suspect that anyone out there is a non-national, you have your suspicions, tell us. We have exercises. We are going to be executing warrants at locations where we hear that you are. We're going to be challenging you. Because at the end of it all, what we want is persons to abide by the law, and whilst abiding by the law, we want a COVID-free Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Commissioner.
And just, Nicholas, just to answer your question about the EMBD, I cannot say with any great certainty exactly when it came to the attention of the Ttps, because that would have been prior to my arrival here. What I can tell you, as I told you, as I told everyone before, in 2015, this is the last part of it that we are closely looking at. That being the case, I saw it was reported on an old clip from a journalist. So I think somewhere in 2016, there may have been some whistleblower who would have brought it to the forefront. So between 2016 and let's say by the end of 2018, because it was when the commissioner took office and his reestablishment of the legal unit, his establishment of the white-collar crime unit, he then focused on these things, these aspects, and he brought it and said, here, we need to deal with this. And that was the advent of the drive in advancing these investigations and getting persons, because we didn't just want one person, we wanted a team of people. So we looked at the firm EMM, because their history is in dealing with matters of this nature, ciphering out the fraud and the fraud relations, and hence we're here now at this advanced stage. Your last part of it, you asked, how soon do we expect charges? That in itself has its own dynamics, because there will be parts that we do not need the permission from the Director of Public Prosecutions to proceed with, and there are parts that we do need. We want to ensure that there is that cohesiveness between both offices. So for that reason, we have to strive to work together. Are there differences of opinions? Yes, there are differences of opinions in the way things should be done, but at the end of the day, we both work together for the good of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that justice is done.
Yes, good afternoon. Julian News from Newsday. I have 3 questions I'd like to ask. Firstly, the DCP Ford, we're speaking about the issue with the plastering of these political posters. It's something we see at every election. Well, 2 questions interrelated. Firstly, are you aware, has anyone ever been charged or held for doing this action? And 2, are we going to see the police doing anything different to stop or to police this activity for this election?
Yeah. I would have to check to find out if anyone has been charged prior to these elections. And it takes me back to something that was said to me, that over the years, a lot of things in our country have eroded. What you find happening with this present dispensation, present administration, is that we are doing everything possible to bring back that sense of law and order into the society. So you find that persons will be rebelling. We haven't pushed back. But I guarantee you that once we have the evidence, we will be charging persons who we either find defacing or damaging persons' properties, or who we have information on. I want to say again that we have the laws in our country that covers that. We have the Municipal Corporations Act, we have the Malicious Damage Act, the Summary Offences Act, the Advertisement Regulations Act. All of them say that it is an offense in various ways to be defacing or to be damaging the property of persons, private or public. And that includes lampposts and other things like that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, DCP4. This question is for the Commissioner. You mentioned a recent death threat of a political leader. Would you be able to identify the political leader?
No, I would not like to at this time, but it was a call that was made where the individual stated that he intends to kill that political leader to ensure that that political leader would not be Prime Minister after August the 10th. But so the police, we are investigating, and again, this is why we intend to look after the safety and security of all candidates, which is why I asked them that even though you do not need permission during a general election to have a walkabout, please bring it to our attention so we will have the relevant police security there to ensure not just safety of you as the candidate, but that of your supporters.
Okay, and my final question for now. You mentioned the armored personnel carrier. What is the status? Is one being sourced? Is one being looked at? What is
it is. Hopefully, in about 2 months, it should be here. And we would have seen what has happened in this country, where there were threats to kill police officers. Police officers have been shot at. We have been forced now to go into volatile situations and being confronted. We would have seen what took place in 1990. In 1990, we had armored personnel carriers. So it is amazing that something that we had in 30 years ago in this country, 30 years later, in a degree now where we have terrorism, where we have criminal elements not just using sidearms, but they have the caliber weapons that have 7.62, 5.56 rounds that can penetrate any regular vehicle. You will think that persons, anyone who has an issue and a concern with it, well, it shows which side of defense you're on as it pertains to law and order in this country.
Good afternoon, Peter Christopher from Guardian Media. I just have a follow-up question to what DCP Ford mentioned about the Venezuelans who have registration cards and may have returned to Venezuela. I also note over the weekend that the Minister of National Security made mention that if Venezuelans with registration cards have been found to be aiding in harboring illegal immigrants, they would also have their registration cards revoked. Has the police come across any Venezuelans who have been a part of that process, and are they among the number of people who are being repatriated, is my question.
Okay, and just to reconfirm before Mr. Ford gets in there, the law is clear. Because persons here may have a work permit or a get out of jail free card and they are not a citizen of this country, those persons can be shipped back at any time if A, they are deemed a threat to national security, or B, a liability to the public purse. So it gives authorization. So even based on intelligence, if I get intelligence of persons who just have work permits here, or they have a 6-month grant to remain in this country, and we have information that person is involved in criminal activity or aiding and abetting, that can immediately be revoked. Mr. Ford.
Okay, thank you, sir. As we speak, we have 46 persons detained in Southwestern Division, which is Penal, Siparia down there, and persons meaning Venezuelan nationals. We have 4 Venezuelan nationals that were held over the weekend as a result of the special exercise I spoke to you about, and we have 32 Venezuelans being held down in the West. Inquiries are actively ongoing And once those persons are found to be in possession of those registration documents, that will be communicated to the necessary authorities to have their documents revoked and have them as some of the persons to be repatriated. As to the 167 to be repatriated tomorrow, at this time I cannot tell you who had documents that were valid or invalid, but certainly I can get that information and get it to you. But once we find the persons with documents that are legal and you are part of that trafficking enterprise, you will be deemed person non grata and sent back.
And my final question, I would just like to get an update with regard to the investigation into the death of Onella Graves as well as the incident in Mova last month. If there's any update.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know. That both matters still being thoroughly investigated by the PCA. They are driving it forward. We are providing all of the information for them. We're also getting a lot of camera footage, and also we've been acquiring the firearms of all the police officers who would have been on the scene and be able to link the firearms as it pertains to the matter in Beetham. I do not want to say much more, but I give the assurance that these matters are being thoroughly investigated, and the same as it pertains to the shooting in Mova. That's it? Okay, members. Sorry.
Just shed some light on
the mic.
Hi, Suchman Singh again from TV6. Commissioner, could you just shed some light on the Tobago shooting last evening, where one man was fatally shot and another was injured? Yeah, by the police officer.
You have the information on that? Okay, and just before that, I just want to bring to your attention, we intend to put, when I met with the business sector and other arms in Trinidad and Tobago a few months ago, they brought to my attention the concern that there seemed to be some type of migration of criminal elements into Tobago. Just this morning, there's been a massive insertion of members of the Special Operation Response Team. They have gone into Tobago. It would be seen, it would be felt. We are aware of the individuals. It involves certain criminal elements in Trinidad, and they feel that they can get across to Tobago to conduct their activity. The first 5 months of the year, Tobago, there was not one murder. Now I think there have been 8 in the last 6 weeks or so, or 2 months. So we're aware what their intention is, and likewise, the same way that we intend to suppress any criminal element, we intend to do the same in Tobago. So there's a lot that we'll be doing as it pertains to operations of persons getting across to Tobago and dealing with the individuals who are across there this time. Mr. Ford.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so what we have around 10 p.m. Last evening at the Milford Road in Crown Point, Tobago, in the area of a lounge called Up Top Lounge, we had a man, a 32-year-old man, chopping another resident of Tobago. An off-duty police officer who was in the vicinity called on him to stop, and he turned and started coming towards the police officer with the cutlass. Now, in that situation where you were chopping someone and you're coming towards me, and what happened, the police officer discharged some rounds from his firearm, which struck the gentleman. Unfortunately, he died. We have an investigator that has been appointed, and investigations are ongoing into that death.
Okay. Okay, members of the media, thank you very much.
Thank you.